Donald Trump has just secured another Supreme Court victory, this time over the Remain in Mexico policy, also known as the Migrant Protection Protocols. This is the policy that says if a migrant comes through Mexico and comes to the U.S. and applies for asylum, they must wait in Mexico. Now, previously, a court shot this down saying you can't do it. In response, the federal government, I don't want to necessarily say Trump did it, but the federal government deployed troops. I believe it was National Guard down to the border in 2 different states. Well, now Trump has won and the Supreme Court has sided with him. Let's read this story from Fox News saying Supreme Court gives Trump win by allowing Remain in Mexico policy to continue. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has said a week earlier that it would block the policy in Arizona and California, the 2 border states where its authority extends. The Trump administration then turned to the Supreme Court for relief. The application for stay presented to Justice Kagan and by her referred to the court is granted. And the district court's April 8, 2019 order granting a preliminary injunction is stayed pending the timely filing and disposition of a petition for a writ of certiorari. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. The Supreme Court said in an order which noted that Justice Sonia Sotomayor opposed the Trump administration's stay application. The high court action came a day before the lower court order was to have taken effect. Instead, the Remain in Mexico policy will remain in force while the lawsuit challenging it plays out in the courts. The Justice Department responded Wednesday by saying the high court's order restores the government's ability to manage the southwest border and to work cooperatively with the Mexican government to address illegal immigration. We are gratified the Supreme Court granted a stay, which prevents a district court injunction from impairing the security of our borders and the integrity of our immigration system, a DOJ spokesman said. The policy, officially known as Migrant Protection Protocols, required. I told you what that was. The court of Appeals unequivocally declared this policy to be illegal. The Supreme Court should as well, said Judy Rabinowitz, an American Civil Liberties Union lawyer who represents asylum seekers and immigrant advocacy groups in the case. Asylum seekers face grave danger and irreversible harm every day this depraved policy remains in effect. Now, I'm going to stop there and say there's no guarantee that they'll be safe in America or Mexico. I don't understand the opposition or the argument trying to be made. If someone comes to the U.S. and they're walking around the desert and they get picked up and then want asylum and get released, where do they go and what will they do? And what's the difference between being homeless in the United States and in Mexico? Is it the assumption that because we live in a wealthier country, we can provide for them or that other people can? I honestly don't know. Maybe there's an answer. You tell me. The administration had argued that thousands of immigrants would rush the border if the high court didn't step in. The Supreme Court's order noted that the stay only applies while the administration files a petition for the Supreme Court to review the Ninth Circuit's decision. Should the court decline, the stay will be lifted and the policy will go back to being blocked. Should the court decide to hear the case, the stay will remain in effect until the court hands down a decision. About 60,000 asylum seekers have been returned to Mexico to wait for their cases to wind through clogged U.S. immigration courts since the policy was introduced in January 2019 in San Diego and later expanded across the border. Now, here's what I want to do. This is a big win for Trump. It's not definitive yet. It's just, allowing his policy to continue. But I have a story from BuzzFeed, which I think is very important to explain to you the problems of illegal immigration and why Bernie Sanders opposed illegal immigration back in 2015. Because there are corrupt individuals who would exploit the desperate and put them in positions that are not safe. And essentially, look, companies want to make money, cut benefits, pay dirt wages, and they can bypass the law if they know you are not legally allowed to work. Take a look at this story from BuzzFeed. Ukrainian migrants said they were lured to Germany, then made to work in squalid conditions with barely any pay. 2 of them said they worked at a warehouse belonging to a logistics giant, which now says it is conducting an internal investigation. A BuzzFeed News Germany investigation. I think it's interesting that BuzzFeed tends to align with the left on a lot of issues. Yet here they are pointing out one of the biggest problems with illegal immigration. These migrant caravans that were coming to the U.S., in the past year, many of these migrants were saying they were promised jobs. They were told that when they came there, they would be welcomed in and there were job fairs. And this was your big opportunity to come to America. It was a lie. It was exploitation. And it was major corporations that were trying to exploit these desperate people so they could pay them dirt and make more money for themselves. And it used to be the left that called this out. It's not today. Today, it's Republicans for some reason. Today, it's the conservatives. Bernie Sanders said in 2015 it was a right-wing Koch brothers position to support open borders. Yet here we are today with Bernie Sanders saying no deportations, decriminalize border crossings, and break up customs and border protection, which would effectively give those industrialists exactly what they want: a permanent serf class that will be doing labor for dirt wages, that won't be deported. They don't have to provide benefits to. That's what these companies wanted. But it was Donald Trump that sent immigration officers to raid these chicken processing plants. And when those people got deported, it was local African Americans who picked up these jobs, not entirely, but mostly. And it's a story we've seen played out before. The left was supposed to oppose this, but I can't tell you what happened or why, but these people have lost their minds. If somebody is going to try to exploit these migrants and asylum seekers to give them dirt jobs, perhaps the best thing we can do is stop the system entirely. With Trump's Remain in Mexico policy, these companies can't even try to start exploiting them because under Trump's rules, they can't get in. It's very strange to me then. The Democrats would want to support a policy that creates a serf class of people. But I can't say I'm surprised. As I've mentioned time and time again, even the left-wing publication Vox noted the Democrats in 2016 became the party of the ultra-wealthy. They abandoned the Republican Party because Trump's insurgent populist base took over. Where did they go? To the Democrats. The never-Trumpers, the neocons, they went right to the Democrats and said, we're here to support you because you're better than Trump. And it looks like, although many of them don't wield they don't wield influence, enough of their ideas have seeped into the Democratic Party, and now the Democrats are actively supporting policies which would create serfs. These are people who are not citizens, who have limited access to benefits and resources, can be paid below minimum wage. And think about what that does. It allows a company to have people who can't complain, who get no healthcare benefits, no labor rights. They won't be deported, which means these businesses are guaranteed that cheap labor. Now, I'm going to show you one more story to make a point about illegal immigration. The Hill op-ed, Turkey weaponizes refugees against Europe. Whether or not you want to accept it, there are countries that understand how they can manipulate and cause economic damage and hurt everyone by forcing refugees into their countries, because this will put a strain on everyone, particularly the refugees themselves. If you refuse to accept that there are people exploiting those who would go on long, dangerous journeys, then you condemn these people to dying in the wilderness, to falling down and injuring themselves, to being lost in the woods. And we see these photos from the southern border of the U.S. where a man and his daughter are face down in the water. That's because these people who would exploit them are encouraging them to come, make dangerous journeys that many of them don't survive, and then you say we should keep encouraging this. I just don't get it. I really, really don't. I'm not saying Trump's policies are 100% correct. I'm saying it seems to be the Republicans are the only ones having a conversation about how we disincentivize people making these dangerous journeys. In Europe, Erdogan of Turkey has repeatedly threatened he would push the refugees out into other countries, using them as a cudgel against those who would not give him what he wants because he knows it would hurt them. He knows it would hurt these countries. But I think about it this way. It reminds me of a superhero movie. And the bad guy knows that trying to fight the superhero isn't helping him. So what does he do? He takes aim at the innocent bystander. That's what it feels like to me. Someone like Erdogan knows he wants leverage. He wants power. So instead of arguing against these countries, he says, I'm going to hurt the refugees. And these countries then have no choice but to try and jump in front of these people to save them. He also knows that it can cause economic destabilization. These people will clash on the borders, and it's going to, for the most part, it'll hurt everybody. But who's getting hurt the most? The people with no homes and nowhere to go. You need to make sure you do not allow these people to exploit those who are desperate and in need. We need to make sure that those who seek a better life can improve the countries they live in so they don't need to flee anymore. So they can plant a tree whose shade they know they will never sit beneath. so that in 50 years, their children will have that better life. But if we just encourage them to leave behind this country and leave it in ruins, make a dangerous journey they can't survive, and then be exploited by companies that don't want to pay fair wages, you are just perpetuating suffering. Sometimes the correct answer isn't the one that provides immediate relief. Sometimes the hard choice is the correct one and will lead to a better future for everybody. But stop playing games. Stop falling victim to those that would weaponize refugees. I got another segment coming up for you in a few minutes. I'll see you all shortly.